Have you ever wondered about the hidden rules that shape the daily lives of Muslim women? Some of these traditions might surprise you, not because they are strange or outdated, but because they are often misunderstood by those unfamiliar with Islamic culture. From deeply rooted customs to practices that vary across regions, these rules reveal a fascinating intersection of faith, history, and identity. Today, we're diving into 13 unique rules that Muslim women follow. Rules that many may not openly share, or that outsiders rarely comprehend in their full context. Imagine a world where wearing specific clothing or following particular rituals isn't just about personal choice, but a reflection of spiritual devotion and cultural values. For many Muslim women, these rules are more than restrictions. They represent a way of life filled with meaning and purpose. Yet, some of these customs are surrounded by misconceptions or incomplete narratives that leave many questions unanswered. Why do some women cover their hair while others don't? What's the story behind rules about marriage, inheritance, or public behavior? By the end of this journey, you'll not only have a deeper understanding of these practices, but also an appreciation for the resilience and strength of women who live by them every day. But this isn't just about the rules themselves. It's also about how these guidelines reflect the diversity and adaptability of the Muslim world. While some practices are strict in one country, they might be interpreted differently in another. For example, what might be a law in one region could simply be a cultural tradition elsewhere. This diversity reminds us that Islam, like any belief system, is lived and experienced in countless ways, shaped by geography, history, and individual choices. Stay with us until the end, because the final rule we'll discuss is one of the most surprising, a practice so unexpected that it might completely change how you see Muslim culture. Along the way, you'll discover stories, facts, and insights that challenge stereotypes and open your mind to new perspectives. So, are you ready to explore a world of hidden traditions and surprising truths? Let's uncover the secrets behind these 13 fascinating rules together. Rule 13. They cannot show their hair in public. The hijab is one of the most recognizable symbols of modesty and faith in Islam. For many Muslim women, wearing the hijab is a deeply personal and spiritual act, representing their commitment to God and their cultural identity. The concept of covering the hair comes from Islamic teachings on modesty, which emphasize humility in appearance and behavior. However, this practice is not uniform and varies significantly depending on the country and the interpretation of Islamic law by different schools of thought. In some countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran, wearing the hijab is mandatory in public, while in others, such as Indonesia or Turkey, it is often a personal choice influenced by cultural and familial expectations. The decision to wear a hijab can also be shaped by social pressures or a desire to express individuality and faith. Historically, the use of the hijab dates back to the early days of Islam in the 7th century, when women in Arabia adopted it as a symbol of social status and religious observance. Today, the hijab remains a powerful symbol of empowerment for many, even as it sparks debates about women's rights and freedom of choice globally. Rule 12. Forbidden to go out alone, without a mahram. A mahram is a male guardian or close male relative whose role is to protect and accompany a woman in certain public situations. This concept is rooted in traditional Islamic teachings that emphasize the safety and dignity of women. In countries like Saudi Arabia, this rule has historically been strictly enforced, often requiring women to be accompanied by a mahram when traveling or attending public events. However, recent reforms have begun to relax these restrictions, granting women greater independence in movement and daily life. In contrast, more liberal countries like Turkey often interpret this rule differently, allowing women to participate freely in public life without requiring a guardian. The modern era has introduced new dynamics, with Muslim women excelling in fields such as sports, business, and politics. Many women balance traditional values with contemporary aspirations, demonstrating that these rules are not universal, but shaped by context and societal changes. Rule 11. They cannot marry non-Muslims. According to Islamic law, Muslim women are not permitted to marry non-Muslim men. This rule stems from the desire to preserve the Islamic faith within the family, as traditional teachings suggest that the religion of the father plays a significant role in shaping the beliefs of children. However, this rule does not apply equally to Muslim men, who are allowed to marry women of other Abrahamic faiths, such as Christianity and Judaism. In Muslim communities abroad, interfaith marriages are becoming more common, particularly in multicultural societies. Studies show that such unions often lead to discussions about religious compromises and mutual respect. For instance, in Western countries, some couples agree to raise their children with knowledge of both faiths. In more conservative regions, the rule remains firmly upheld, reflecting a commitment to preserving cultural and religious values. This divergence illustrates how the rule is interpreted differently depending on societal norms and local traditions. Rule 10. Divorce is not always equal. Divorce in Islam can take different forms, with distinct rights and processes for men and women. The talaq allows a Muslim man to divorce his wife by declaring his intention, often with minimal legal or social obstacles. In contrast, the khula grants women the right to initiate divorce, but typically requires them to return their dowry or provide other forms of compensation to their husband. Some countries, like Tunisia and Morocco, have introduced reforms to create a more balanced legal framework for divorce. These reforms aim to protect women's rights and ensure that both parties have an equal say in the dissolution of marriage. For example, in Tunisia, women can file for divorce on equal grounds as men, reflecting a progressive approach to gender equality within Islamic law. These changes highlight the evolving interpretation of traditional practices in modern contexts, offering a glimpse into the broader conversation about women's rights in Muslim societies. Rule 9. They do not wear shoes inside the house. The practice of removing shoes before entering a house in many Muslim households is deeply rooted in both religious and cultural traditions. Cleanliness is a significant aspect of Islamic teachings, as it is closely associated with physical and spiritual purity. This is particularly important when considering that Muslims often pray at home, and the prayer area must remain clean to perform salah. Walking in with outdoor shoes, which can bring dirt and impurities, is seen as disrespectful to the sanctity of the home. Beyond cleanliness, this practice also reflects respect for sacred spaces. In many Muslim households, the home is considered a place of peace and refuge, where spiritual practices like reading the Quran and family prayers take place. By removing shoes, individuals show reverence not only for their personal living space, but also for the spiritual significance of the home. This tradition extends to mosques, where shoes are strictly prohibited to maintain the purity of the prayer area. While this practice is common in many cultures outside the Islamic world, its religious underpinnings in Muslim households highlight a deeper connection between daily habits and spiritual values, fostering a sense of respect and humility in every aspect of life. Rule 8. They must fast even during pregnancy, in some cases. Fasting during the holy month of Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, making it a cornerstone of the Muslim faith. During this time, Muslims abstain from food, drink, and other physical needs from dawn to sunset, focusing instead on spiritual reflection and devotion. While fasting is obligatory for all adult Muslims, exceptions are made for those who are ill, traveling, or pregnant. However, this exemption is not universal, and some women choose to fast even during pregnancy, driven by their personal faith and devotion. For many pregnant women, the decision to fast is deeply personal. Some see it as a way to strengthen their connection with God, believing that the spiritual rewards outweigh the physical challenges. Others consult with doctors and religious leaders to determine whether fasting might impact their health or that of their unborn child. In certain cases, women may choose to fast on alternate days or make up the missed fasts later in the year, ensuring they maintain their religious obligations without compromising their well-being. This practice varies across communities and countries, reflecting diverse interpretations of Islamic teachings. While fasting during pregnancy is not universally required, the stories of women who take on this spiritual challenge highlight the profound dedication and faith that characterize the observance of Ramadan. Rule 7. Limitations on education, depending on the country. Educational opportunities for Muslim women vary widely across the Islamic world, influenced by cultural norms, socioeconomic factors, and government policies. In some countries, women face significant barriers to education due to conservative traditions or limited resources. For example, girls in rural areas of Afghanistan have struggled to access schooling, particularly under restrictive regimes. In contrast, countries like Malaysia and Turkey have made significant strides in promoting education for women, with many Muslim women excelling in various fields. One of the most prominent examples of a Muslim woman advocating for education is Malala Yousafzai, who became a global symbol for girls' right to education after surviving an attack by the Taliban. Her story inspires countless others to pursue knowledge despite societal or political obstacles. Across the Islamic world, women have risen to prominence in fields such as science, technology, and politics, proving that access to education can break down stereotypes and foster progress. While challenges remain in certain regions, the successes of Muslim women in education reflect the potential for change and empowerment. By continuing to support and expand educational opportunities, societies can ensure that women contribute fully to the growth and development of their communities. Rule 6. They cannot touch unrelated men. In Islamic tradition, physical contact between men and women who are not closely related, referred to as non-mahram, is generally discouraged. This rule is based on teachings that emphasize modesty and maintaining boundaries to prevent misunderstandings or inappropriate interactions. The concept of mahram refers to a man who is a close family member, such as a father, brother, or husband, with whom physical contact is permitted. This guideline extends to various aspects of daily life, including social and professional interactions. In some communities, Muslim women avoid handshakes or physical greetings with unrelated men, choosing verbal greetings instead. This practice, while rooted in religious principles, is often adapted to modern settings. For instance, in formal or international business environments, some women choose to politely explain their preference or find alternative ways to maintain professionalism. By upholding these boundaries, Muslim women demonstrate their commitment to modesty and respect for Islamic values. At the same time, this practice often sparks curiosity and serves as an opportunity to educate others about Islamic traditions, fostering greater understanding and mutual respect in multicultural environments. Rule 5. They must adhere to a strict dress code. The expectations for Muslim women's dress vary significantly across regions, reflecting a mix of religious interpretations and cultural traditions. In some countries like Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan, women are expected to wear the niqab or burqa, which covers most or all of the body, including the face. In contrast, in places like Turkey or Indonesia, women often wear more modern clothing, combining modesty with contemporary fashion. These differences highlight the diversity within the Muslim world and the influence of local customs on how Islamic teachings are practiced. A common misconception is that strict dress codes are entirely religious. While the Quran emphasizes modesty for both men and women, specific garments like the niqab or burqa are not explicitly mandated and are often shaped by cultural norms. For instance, the hijab, which covers the hair, is seen by many as a religious obligation, while other forms of covering may stem from societal expectations. This diversity in dress codes reflects the balance between faith and culture. While some women embrace traditional attire as an expression of their spirituality, others opt for less conservative clothing, demonstrating that adherence to these rules can vary based on personal choice, interpretation, and societal context. Rule 4. Limitations on the right to drive. For many years, women in Saudi Arabia were not allowed to drive, a restriction that symbolized broader debates about women's rights in the country. This rule, rooted in cultural conservatism rather than Islamic law, was lifted in 2018 as part of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 reforms. Allowing women to drive marked a significant step toward greater gender equality and mobility. The restriction on driving was often justified by arguments about safety and tradition, but it also reflected deeper concerns about women's independence and their role in public life. Critics argued that the ban limited women's economic opportunities and personal freedoms, forcing them to rely on male relatives or expensive private drivers. The lifting of the driving ban has empowered many women, enabling them to pursue careers, attend universities, and manage their daily lives more freely. However, this change also highlights the ongoing struggle for gender equality in conservative societies. While progress is being made, debates continue about the broader implications of women's increased participation in public and professional spaces. Rule 3. they cannot always choose whom to marry. Arranged marriages are a common practice in many Muslim-majority countries, reflecting cultural traditions rather than specific Islamic requirements. In these arrangements, families often play a significant role in selecting a spouse, aiming to ensure compatibility in terms of religion, values, and social status. While some women welcome this guidance, others feel restricted by the lack of personal choice. In more conservative societies, rejecting an arranged marriage can lead to social stigma or family conflict. However, modern interpretations of Islamic teachings emphasize the importance of mutual consent in marriage. Many women are now asserting their right to choose their partner, challenging traditional norms while remaining committed to their faith. For example, in countries like Pakistan and India, there are growing stories of women who have resisted arranged marriages, opting instead for love marriages or pursuing careers before settling down. These stories highlight a shift in cultural attitudes, with younger generations seeking a balance between respecting family traditions and asserting individual autonomy. Rule 2. Prayer and gender segregation. In most mosques, men and women pray in separate areas, a practice designed to maintain focus and minimize distractions during worship. This segregation is based on Islamic teachings that emphasize the importance of humility and concentration in prayer. By separating genders, mosques aim to create an environment that fosters spiritual devotion without social or physical distractions. This practice is not uniform across all Muslim communities. In some mosques, especially in Western countries, men and women pray in the same room, separated only by a partition. In others, women may have entirely separate spaces, often located on a different floor. While some critics view this separation as a reflection of gender inequality, others argue that it respects the unique roles and needs of men and women in worship. For many Muslim women, having a dedicated space allows them to pray and reflect comfortably, free from societal pressures. This tradition, like many others, reflects the diversity and adaptability of Islamic practices across different cultures. Rule 1. They inherit less than men. Under Islamic law, inheritance is divided according to specific guidelines outlined in the Quran. Typically, women inherit half the share of men. For example, a son receives twice the inheritance of a daughter. This rule is based on the idea that men are financially responsible for their families, including providing for their wives, children, and other dependents. Supporters of this rule argue that it ensures financial stability for families and aligns with the traditional roles assigned to men and women in Islamic society. However, critics contend that this approach does not reflect modern realities, where women often contribute equally to household income or even serve as primary breadwinners. In some countries, legal reforms have been introduced to address this disparity. For instance, Tunisia allows equal inheritance rights for men and women, sparking debates about the balance between religious tradition and contemporary values. This ongoing discussion highlights the challenges of adapting Islamic principles to evolving societal norms, while preserving the integrity of the faith. The rules we've explored offer a fascinating glimpse into the complex intersections of faith, culture, and modernity in the lives of Muslim women. Each practice reflects a delicate balance between religious principles, deeply rooted traditions, and the evolving realities of contemporary life. While some rules are strictly followed in certain regions, others adapt to the changing needs of society, illustrating the diversity and flexibility within the Muslim world. These practices often spark debates and misunderstandings, but they also serve as a reminder of how culture and belief systems shape individual and collective identities. As we delve into these rules, it's essential to move beyond stereotypes and approach the subject with curiosity and respect. Whether it's the modesty reflected in dress codes, the family dynamics in arranged marriages, or the spiritual significance of fasting, each rule tells a story of resilience, devotion, and adaptability. These practices may seem unusual or even restrictive from an outside perspective, but for many women, they are meaningful expressions of their faith and values. Understanding these rules requires us to consider the broader context of cultural diversity and personal choice, challenging us to view the world through a more nuanced lens. Which of these rules surprised you the most? Did any of them change the way you perceive the daily lives of Muslim women? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you learned something new today, don't forget to share this video with others, as understanding and dialogue are essential steps toward building a more inclusive and empathetic world. Before you go, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future content. Your support helps us continue to share stories and insights that matter. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you in the next video.